Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video, we will be talking about Dark Dimension 3, not a node, not what it takes to beat a node, but the teams that you should bring to a node. Punk, Yeti, and myself have finally released an infographic on the teams that we think you should bring to Dark Dimension 3. This includes first run and second run. So we took a time to be able to put one of these out because, you know, you really want to see what the experience is like in one of these things before necessarily making a huge recommendation. We could talk and do all these things, but really wanted to kind of get through this and see what it was like. And so we spent a lot of time in Dark Dimension 3 finishing it, and we're ready to release an infographic now. So this video is going to be releasing of that infographic, which you're going to be able to find on all our Discord servers. Links in the description below. Come join us. We like to discuss things. So I'm going to show the infographic in its whole in a little bit here, and then I'm going to go through it to kind of explain it. So that way, hopefully I can cover any of the major questions that people have. You know, obviously we always want to talk to you about what you think might be different. We really tried to analyze this as best we could, tried to think of different things that could be constraints on people, all that type of thing, which I'll get into that in a minute. But we did what we thought we could do. And Ebony Mall just came to the game, what, a week ago? So that ended up shaking things up a little bit, and I want to talk about that as well. So let's get to it.
Bring me WolverThor!
Okay, so I've got the infographic up in this general range, so you can see it and check it out. You're going to see it in its wholesale. And again, come to the Discord servers that we're all on. Links are below. You'll be able to find this infographic in any of either Punk, Yeti / the Tahiti one, or my Discord servers. And again, come join us, talk to us. We all kind of, we have a web that we kind of tie into there where we're on each other's servers. So you can hit up any of us on any of those servers. One of the things that I do want to mention in this is that be careful in what you're seeing. This is in-game I'm talking. While this beautiful graphic is up there, I want to talk to you about, you're going to see higher scores with some of the people doing their second runs in this, in Dark Dimension 3, and you might think to yourself, oh, I want to bring that team in. Be really careful with that, because some of the gear constraints that we have in this game mode really kind of force certain decisions on the player. You know, a lot of times you could be like, well, I want to bring this team, but I fell short on gear. We try to kind of address those things, so we give some alternate options, which again, I'll get to as I go through here. But a main point that I wanted to talk about before starting this thing is make sure that you're not just looking at those teams doing, you know, super high damage, going, that's the team I'm going to bring in for my first run. Because those people are likely on their second run and got a ton of gear from finishing their first run. So please, please, please remember that. So that is a big, big reason why we did first run and timed run on this graphic, so you can understand how you want to hit this thing. And that's really where we're going to start on this thing, is you'll see on this infographic that there is a first run and timed run sections. And it's really important to understand the gear requirements as you go into that. And make sure when you're listening to people, you need to remember where they're potentially at in the game versus when they experienced it the first time going through. Because your first time going through really does, you have a lot of different constraints than your second time, or as you recommend people after you've finished both runs. And those are things we tried to think of when making this infographic. So one of the things that I want to mention that I kind of touched upon is gear constraints. So the mini uniques, the Moros, the flaming burritos, the pink spades, the Ickers, you know, many different names that you hear for these different things, whale tears. All these different mini uniques that you see in the game are a big reason why people can't just bring whoever they want into Dark Dimension 3. And in some cases, when you have, say, alien spore bottlenecks because of a certain symbiote team, that might be a constraint. So what we did, and you're going to see in the infographic, and I'll highlight it here off to the side, is we've got what we call alternates. So the way we've laid this infographic out is you've got the slots that you do like you normally set up a team, where it's the 3 in the front row and 2 in the back. So we go slot 1, slot 2. Let me do it this way. Slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, slot 4, slot 5. So if there's a specific slot that you want to have or that we think an alternate character could be used, we've highlighted that slot yellow, and just below the team, we've said who we think could be an alternate tune to bring in there. And that could be because they're just as good, or there's a potential gear constraint there. So, or it's maybe not just as good, or maybe it's another option that could be as good. So that's one of the things that I want to explain to you as I go through this graphic. The other way to read this graphic again is slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is how we think you should order your team. Because sometimes you want gaps in between certain players or characters, and you want certain characters next to other ones to minimize damage. That's how this graphic's laid out, so that you can see not just your team, but how to lay them out. Okay, so let's get into the first run and the no restriction section. Okay, first thing I want to say in the first run for this no restrictions section is I want to talk about what we call the Phoenix tax. Phoenix is the MVP of like the first run no restriction section and the global section. That her special, which is 15% or 20% if you put the T4s into it, which you should just for Dark Dimension alone, honestly, is that she's taking 20% off of the HP of everybody on the board. So you really want to pay that Phoenix tax, which is the 50 cores to heal her, to get a second attack in. So as you can see in the graphic here, what we say for the no restrictions run, the ideal team that you'd want to bring in: Phoenix, Symbiote Spider-Man, Ebony Maw, Hela, and Minerva. Now you'll see that Ebony Maw, he's actually highlighted yellow, and the reason for that is some people might maybe not have him due to a Mystic Gear constraint. Maybe they haven't been able to lock him because they don't have Black Bolt. All types of different things there. And our suggestion for the alternate there is just leave it empty. Leave that slot empty, and you're like, well, I need a 5th character. You're right. And what you see in Attack 2 is your 5th character, but you use it in Attack 2, so you don't have to heal twice. And that character is Colossus. So, again, no restrictions. You've got 2 attacks. One is with your team, your full team -1 potentially. And then the second attack is you heal Phoenix and bring in this other person. In our case, we're recommending Colossus. So the reason we recommended some of these tunes, I'm just going to briefly touch on these. Phoenix, I already said it. She's the MVP of the first 8 nodes. You know, at least on your first run. Symbiote Spider-Man, he heals himself. He's got debuffs that Hela can spread. Hela's got Greg. That gives you the RNG factor to maybe live a little longer. Minerva, she speeds up because when Greg dies, so she can get to her ult quicker, she can get to her revive quicker. I just mentioned Minerva, she reses people. She's got her ult that takes 15% off the enemy. Okay, so that's really the basis of those 4. And Symbiote Spider-Man, you have to use him on City later, spoiler. And then Minerva and Hela, you want on Cosmic. So it just makes sense. And the reason we put the empty as the alternate to Maw is because of the Phoenix tax. So when you get into this Attack 2, you just heal Phoenix, you bring in Colossus, and the reason you've got Colossus there and not on the first run, don't put him in the first run unless you've got a ton of cores and you want to heal both of them. You're really just here to get Phoenix to her special and ideally her ult. So you heal Phoenix and you got Colossus who you haven't used yet. You drop him in on the other side, you get Phoenix's special off, and you move on with your day. Now, you'll notice Colossus is highlighted yellow here as an alternate. Potential options here: Black Bolt, who's a fantastic tune, or Empty. If you're so constrained, you might only be able to heal Phoenix and it's empty. Now, we've got a note at the bottom of the infographic, okay? This note specifically is telling you we recommend play at 2 times speed in case you need to retry an attack. And the reason that it says that is because, and I had it to me if you watched a couple of my Dark Dimension videos, I think I had it at least 4 or 5 times where I didn't quit fast enough and I lost my team, or I lost Phoenix without getting her special off. And that kind of stinks when you've used cores to heal somebody. So if you, for some reason, don't have Colossus in this situation, you use Black Bolt or have it empty, make sure you've got it slower so that you can see if Phoenix is going to die, and you want to quit before she dies if you haven't got her special off. Now be careful, you might not get her ult off, don't get too greedy here, but you want to make sure you get her special off. Okay, so we recommend the 2x speed in that regard. And really, anytime you're getting close to potentially dying and you're not sure you want to keep your run, you might want to slow it down to 2x speed. I personally don't love the 1x speed. It's a little bit too slow, and sometimes you can't see if you're actually dying because the damage that's done is kind of up above and you're dead, and then by the time it zooms back, it's too late. So 2x speed's what we're recommending. And again, the biggest thing to pull from this no restrictions run is the 2 attacks. 1 + 1, 2 attacks. Make sense? Okay, let's get to global. All right, similar to the no restrictions nodes, global has the same general concept where you're using 2 attacks and you're going to alternate these 2 attacks daily. The Phoenix tax, okay, where you bring a group of tunes in with Phoenix to make sure she gets her special off, and maybe they do a little bit, and you know, we'll talk about the tunes here in a second, and then you bring in your other tune with Phoenix and make sure that you get off your Phoenix special. Move on. That's it. Day's over. So the team you want to use on the first attack: Phoenix, Yo-Yo. We got an empty slot, Shuri, and Mr. Sinister. Okay. Now the reason we've got, you'll see Yo-Yo here, is she's highlighted yellow. The reason she's highlighted yellow is because there's a serious bio constraint on gear, specifically the mini uniques that comes from City. Okay, so if you're not able to get, and I would prioritize those City first because it's hard. You want to make sure you've got at least 2 to 3 tunes in that City group, whereas there's a lot of different global ones. So we either recommend that slot being empty as opposed to using Yo-Yo, or Scientist Supreme. Okay, so that is 2 tech tunes with Shuri, but you know, Scientist Supreme can do some flips and get some more damage. She does bring some risk into it because you'll get defense down, and you really want to be careful with that, and especially like the node 3. I call it the annoyance node. It's the Brawler Miss Marvel node, because it's not necessarily the hardest node, but it is the most annoying. So that is something to think about. But if you can have Yo-Yo and still have those later tunes with the gear bottleneck on bio, she is fantastic. The offense down on different tunes does give you some survivability. We already talked about why you want Phoenix. Shuri, she gives energy, she gives some healing, and she gives the defense up, ideally at the start of the turn. She could die too quickly, so you might have a couple days where she's not using that defense up, but you know, she could throw out some heal blocks, she could heal up the team a little bit, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. And then Sinister, one of the big reasons Sinister still remains on this list, mutant gear, there's not a ton that need it. And on top, at least at the moment, you know, we have more mutants coming, but right now it's Sinister. He's really great in other game modes, including Arena. If you're into war, he's great. You know, the higher T14 on this character, he's really tough to get through for Marauders. And if you know there's a Falcon, and there's a couple nodes with Jean on them, so you want to be able to clone those Jean Greys and then use that special. Okay, so he's a good tune just for those nodes alone. So you bring him in, he's kind of there for a little bit of fodder. He might throw some heals, but when he gets those clones with the Jean Greys or the Falcons, it's very, very helpful. And then again, you pay the Phoenix tax, heal her up with those 50 cores. You got Colossus sitting on the bench, you bring in, because you didn't use him on the first attack. You get to your Phoenix special. Ideally, you're all 2, but who knows? And then you move on with your day. So that's what you got for Global. Now, let's get into Cosmic. Okay, so for Cosmic, interestingly enough, the first run I had for this, I didn't have this exact team. But with the introduction of Ebony Maw, he really does change things a bit, okay? But you need him around other players that help him. He's not just gonna go in there and just blow everybody away because he's got long cooldowns. So you gotta be careful with him, okay? But for that reason, we've got him in this Cosmic node as a yellow highlight, which means we have different options. So the way we've laid this out with the primary team is Ebony Maw, Hela, which is a must. Hela is an absolute must-have with Greg, okay? Then you got Black Bolt for your damage, and he puts out some pretty high damage out there, and he's got really good survivability. For a blaster, he can take some hits. Even in Dark Dimension 3, granted mine was 6 stars, I think I started 6 reds, he took at least 2 to 3 hits most times. So I think even at a 4 red star, you're probably taking 2 hits before he dies. Then you got an empty slot in 4, and your Minerva. Your Minerva's got that 15% ultimate that takes health from the team and heals your team up to full if they're low. So use that at appropriate times. And as always, she's got that res, so it's just great. With Greg dying, she speeds up. She gets more turns. Now, I will say that I actually T4'd her passive. I didn't love it, but I also had Loki on my team when I first went through there, so a lot of times when Greg and the summons were dying, she'd come out of the stealth, which sometimes caused problems, but anyway, it was, I wasn't upset that I T4'd it. I was kind of like, I probably could have gotten away without it. So, like I mentioned, Ebony Maw's got the yellow highlight, which means there's another option. Loki and Thor. Yeti and I always poke fun at each other about the two there. I personally like Loki because I like to what I call wave control, so that I can make sure that I can, pick certain tunes as much as I can if I get the right sequence of events before I bring that next wave in. Yeti loves out of turn damage. And neither of us, I would say, are wrong. We just have our specific preferences. So we've got Loki and Thor in this group. Before Ebony Maw came in, we were actually talking about Sif as well. I personally would only recommend Sif if you got Thor, because then you've got Hela and Thor and Sif to give Thor his passive charges. So both tunes are good. You've got different reasons for using both. I'd probably, if you don't have Ebony Maw, recommend the one you've got more reds on. If you want to do the wave control with Loki, that's probably where you want. If you just want to bang through it, you probably want to bring your Thor. Now, one other thing we want to mention here, and you'll see it in the timed run, is Thanos. If you've got Thanos and you don't have a Mystic Gear constraint, and you're like, well, I've got Thanos ready for my run right now, we would recommend Thanos if he's ready. But you're going to look at the timed run for how that's exactly set up. And we weren't certain that people would necessarily have the Mystic Gear here, and to be able to show him as an alternate and reshuffle how the things were ordered, because you want Thanos feeding energy to Ebony Maw, specifically only Ebony Maw, so he can get a special and alt off more often, because his special with those defense ups and offense downs it's a game changer. So if you've got Thanos, look at the sequence in the time section for how you would lay that out. And really, it's about whether you have the Mystic Gear for him or not. So that's what we got for Cosmic on the first run. Now let's check out City. All right, so City, we talked about the bio bottlenecks earlier. This is why it happens. You've got Carnage, empty slot. You've got Symbiote Spider-Man, empty slot. And then we're recommending Venom. You might be going, I got a constraint. Yes, that's why we highlighted this yellow. Because we recognize and understand you might not have enough alien spores to get him up and the other two, or you might have used some on Groot to T13 him, and the bio mini uniques. I still don't have Venom T14, but if you're starting from scratch and you want the best team available, it's this team. You look at Venom is in almost every single City run that's at the high of the damage charts. He's critical with his passive, giving the defense up and spreading the negative effects. Symbiote Spider-Man, we talked about earlier, he gives defense down. He gives that heal on his passive. He's got the extended with his special, and you really time that special right with the stun. So you use that ultimate stun, and you make sure the next turn, and you ideally use it on a turn someone's got their speed bar close to the beginning, not close to taking their turn, and then by the time Symbiote Spider-Man goes again, that person is slowed and hasn't taken their turn, so they still have the stun on them. So you use this Symbiote Spider-Man special somewhere next to that person, and they're basically stun locked. At that point, they're stun locked, they can't go. It's awesome. I used it constantly with my City runs, where I was like, all right, that person's low, and it's actually a good tune. Now, I didn't get stupid with it, where it's like a non-critical tune, I'd stun them. I didn't do that. So be smart about those runs and how you use the stun, but at the same time, don't pass on stunning a critical character if they're about to get off an ability that's really gonna, ruin your attempt. So the Venom aspect, like we said, alternate Ghost Rider. Probably could even put like a Merc Lieutenant on there now that I think about it. But this guy's the best option. Ghost Rider gives some negative debuffs. And as a team of three, I'm not, the Merc Lieutenant. I was like, spoiler alert, he'll come in the timed run. So, it's not necessarily a bad choice, but these three, bar none, they are the best three. You know what I mean? And Ghost Rider, he speeds up with the negative effects, gets more things out there. And if you've got a solid one, he can help if like you lose a Carnage and he gets that charge. He can heal himself up when he's down and do some pretty heavy damage. Plus the offense up or offense down and defense down. All around, Ghost Rider. He was a good alternate. So that's the City team. And again, you want to have the gaps in between there. And that was the reason why we talked about the other biotunes earlier, because you can get those constrained. So now let's talk about the timed run, because like I said before, it is different. You get more gear, so we start shaking things up a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. All right, so timed run, you'll notice that there is no section that says no restrictions, okay, or no requirements, because you've got all this team now. So it's like, just bring your team, you know, and use these different compositions that you might want to go in there. I recommend throwing Symbiote Spider-Man in there with, you know, Hela and Maw and Minerva. There's all kinds of different things you can use and kind of tinker and play with, but we didn't necessarily show it on this graphic because at this point you've got so many tunes on your second run that should be T14 that you can really mix and match and play around a lot. I'm actually not paying the Phoenix tax on the no restrictions nodes. I'm just going. So I want to save cores because I don't want to keep spending them. So anyway, so we're going to jump right to global. And if, again, you want to, I'm not a global yet on my timed run, but if you want to play the Phoenix tax again, these are the recommended ways we're doing it as far as the teams to attack with. So the first team, we've got Phoenix, Yo-Yo, adding Ultron at this point, Shuri, and Scientist Supreme. What this does is you get the Ultron in there, and it actually, you can build your team up and actually gain some momentum. You got Yo-Yo with offense down, you got Shuri with the guaranteed defense up, and you've got the Scientist Supreme there who can get the negative debuffs on the other team. So you have enough protection around Ultron that you can really start building up some damage there and get some sustain. You've got the Scientist Supreme who could potentially res somebody. Obviously not the Phoenix. And you always want to have the Phoenix on global because of the 20%. She's going to do that guaranteed damage, which is awesome. So in attack number 2, after you pay the Phoenix tax, if you so choose, you've got your Colossus and your Sinister. You can slot them off to the side. The Sinister, again, make sure to have that clone ready for the Jean Greys, the Falcons of the world, so that you can make sure to speed your team up and get an additional special off with those Jeans. Those Jean clones, oh, they are really, it just shaves days off of your runs for global. And like I said, most of these other tunes we've kind of talked about in the earlier run, but this is what we recommend for the timed run. You know, you're getting a good solid 2 attacks, and then Ultron can really, I know I brought Ultron on my first run when I went through it, and he was a little bit underwhelming because he just really never got to build his army up. But I think with Shuri and a Yo-Yo and potentially the Scientist Supreme there, I think you can actually do some damage here on the time run. So next, Cosmic on the timed run. Mentioned this before, Thanos. So, and I've played with this team quite a bit already throughout some of the early nodes of Dark Dimension 3. Thanos, Maw, Black Bolt, Hela, and Minerva. Thanos feeding that energy to Ebony Maw, Black Bolt to do the damage, Hela with the Greg and speed up of Minerva. This team is going to make Cosmic so much easier for you, in my opinion. I think that you're going to do a lot of good damage here. You might still have your Asgardian, Thor, Loki sitting around as well. You know, Sif, who knows? You could bring them in on their own separate run if you so choose. But this team, I think, is the best team to use in the Cosmic timed run. So, now let's go over to City. All right, so City, you still got your symbiotes. And again, separate the symbiotes. That was key, okay? So we've slotted in 2 characters in between each one. At this point, hopefully you've guaranteed to get your Venom. You've got your Ghost Rider in slot number 2. And slot number 4, I mentioned in the first City coverage, you got your Merc Lieutenant. We've highlighted him yellow because there is a potential other tune that you might want to bring in there, and that's Vulture. Vulture's got the speed up on deaths. He's got the debuffs that you can put on the other team to help with some slows. So he's not a bad tune. He can go pretty frequently with some of that, so it's not bad. I'd personally bring Merc Lieutenant over Vulture with his specific squad because you're getting some heals in there, some additional heals, and you're getting some offense ups and speed ups on top of what these guys are already doing. So he makes sense to me as the natural 5th in this regard. And I think with that team, you're knocking City out no problem in the time run. So that's what we got. That's it. So what do you guys think? Good teams? Terrible teams? we don't know what we're talking about. Maybe you check all the boxes, who knows? Come to the Discords, tell us what you think either way. We think that these teams are really the best way to kind of progress through Dark Dimension in your first run and time run. And again, that's critical. Okay, these are the best teams we think to go through the first time and then the second time. So be careful when you're seeing those top damage dealers at this point in the game. You don't want to get tricked into thinking that's definitely the best team to use on your first run because of those potential bottlenecks. So we appreciate you guys stopping by. Like I said, come by our Discords, chat, let us know what you think. We hope this infographic's helpful. That's everything that we do, is really to try to help you guys out. Hammer down on the like button, subscription, notification bells, share with your alliance mates. Love to hear them, what they think. And until next time, hope you have a wonderful day.